You turn a corner in the supermarket and see it. A vast, empty space where something used to be. Your brain doesn't just register this absence, it reacts. Deep within the orbitofrontal cortex, the region responsible for calculating value, a switch is flipped. Scarcity has an almost alchemical power to transform the mundane into the desirable. An object's perceived worth isn't fixed. It's a dynamic calculation heavily influenced by its availability. That empty shelf sends a powerful primal signal. This resource is valuable because it is scarce. This isn't a conscious thought. It's a gut-level computation, a survival heuristic from a time when an empty berry bush meant you had to move or starve. This valuation spike immediately triggers another ancient program, the acquisition instinct. Our minds aren't designed for just-in-time global supply chains. They're calibrated for the irregular abundance of a hunter-gatherer world. Seeing a resource, especially a newly valuable one, activates the same neural pathways that told our ancestors to grab as many ripe fruits as they could carry. There might not be more tomorrow. The calm, rational part of your brain that knows trucks will eventually restock the shelves is easily overruled by this deeper, more urgent impulse. In that moment, you are not a 21st century consumer. You are a forager, and the hunt is on. A crisis, by its nature, robs us of our sense of control. An invisible virus, a volatile economy, an uncertain future, these are abstract, untouchable threats. You can't fight a pandemic, but you can stack toilet paper. This is a psychological phenomenon known as creating a sphere of influence. When the world feels chaotic, we shrink our focus to what we can manage. Organizing your pantry, cleaning your house, or building a fortress of Charmin are all tangible actions. They provide a powerful, albeit illusory, sense of agency. Each perfectly stacked roll is a small testament to order in a world of disorder, a physical manifestation of doing something. Psychologists call this the locus of control. People with an internal locus believe they are in charge of their own destiny. Those with an external locus feel their lives are governed by outside forces. A widespread crisis pushes almost everyone towards an external locus of control, creating a profound sense of helplessness. Hoarding becomes a desperate attempt to grab the steering wheel, to shift the locus of control back, even just for one tiny aspect of life. I cannot control the virus, the action says, but I can control the sanitation situation within these four walls. It's a symbolic act of defiance against uncertainty. But you are not acting in a vacuum. You see another shopper, their cart piled high. This is where social proof kicks in. Your brain's mirror neuron system activates, subconsciously simulating the actions of the other person. You don't just see their action. On a neural level, you feel the intention behind it. Their urgency becomes your urgency. If they are stockpiling, your brain reasons, they must know something you don't. They possess some crucial piece of information about the future. This powerful cognitive shortcut bypasses rational analysis. It's safer to copy the behavior of the group than to be the one left behind. When this social proof scales up, it creates what sociologists call an information cascade. The first few shoppers who panic buy may have their own reasons, rational or not. But the 10th shopper is not reacting to the crisis. They are reacting to the first 9 shoppers. By the time the 100th shopper arrives, their decision is based on almost no personal information about the actual supply chain. They are simply following the herd, operating under the assumption that the crowd's wisdom is superior to their own. This is how a small tremor of panic among a few can become a citywide earthquake of irrational yet individually rational behavior. But why toilet paper? Why not canned soup or batteries? Because toilet paper isn't just a product, it's a symbol. It represents a fundamental, almost invisible layer of modern life. It's the baseline of sanitation, comfort, and dignity. Its presence is taken for granted, but its absence suggests a slide back toward a less civilized, less comfortable state of being. It's a soft barrier against chaos. Stockpiling it isn't just about practical need, it's about defending a psychological boundary of what we consider normal and acceptable. We hoard it because it feels like we are hoarding civilization itself. This symbolic power is amplified by its low substitutability. If the bread aisle is empty, you can buy crackers, rice, or tortillas. If there's no beef, you can buy chicken. But for toilet paper, the alternatives are psychologically unacceptable to most people in the developed world. The very thought is jarring and uncomfortable. This creates a unique kind of demand inelasticity. You can't easily swap it for something else, so the perceived cost of running out is astronomically high. This lack of a viable Plan B elevates its status from a household good to an absolute, non-negotiable essential. Finally, consider its physical form. Toilet paper is bulky and inefficient to store. A year's supply of aspirin fits in a bottle. A year's supply of toilet paper fills a closet. And it's visible. You can't discreetly buy 96 rolls. Carrying that enormous, conspicuous package from the store to your car is a form of social signaling. It's a trophy. It broadcasts preparedness, success, and the ability to provide for your family. Like a peacock's tail, it's an honest, if slightly absurd, signal of fitness in a time of perceived scarcity. You are a successful forager, and everyone in the parking lot knows it. All these factors converge into a perfect storm of cognitive biases. We are running ancient software on modern hardware. Our brains evolved to handle immediate threats and to hoard scarce, tangible resources. A global pandemic is a slow-moving, invisible, statistical threat. Our response to panic buy a bulky symbol of civilized comfort is a profound evolutionary mismatch. It is an adaptive behavior from our deep past misapplied to a novel, modern problem. It's not a failure of character, it's a glitch in our beautifully complex but ultimately outdated wetware. Monotony has grown fast. Nearly 2,700 people have watched in the last few weeks, yet less than 0.03% are subscribed. It would mean a lot if you joined by hitting subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.